This really is my favorite time of the year, and it's around this time of the year I think about this tradition I grew up hearing about, and I really wish I could have experienced this tradition growing up as a kid. I wrote about it on my website briefly last year in a piece titled Mis Crismes, when a tradition becomes a memory. And what this was about is children in northern New Mexico and in southern Colorado used to wake up on Christmas morning and they would take these bags with them, like a pillowcase or a used sack of flour. And they would go door to door to their neighbors' homes and they would knock on the door. And when the neighbor would open up the door, the children would be there and they would scream out the words, Mis Crismes, which means in Spanglish, my Christmas. And much like trick-or-treating, the neighbor would give them treats like fruit, oranges, apples, nuts, even pencils, whatever the neighbor had that morning. And I believe, after talking to people about this and doing reading about this tradition, this largely started to fade away sometime in the 1960s. And my mom used to share these stories when she would do this as a little girl. She'd wake up in the mornings and she'd have to put socks on her hands because her family could not afford gloves for the cold mornings. And I theorize in my short article about this that this was a really good way for communities back then to share the burden, if you will, of making sure children in the community were happy on Christmas morning. After all, these were children growing up in tiny villages. Many of them, most of them were not receiving lavish Christmas gifts. Sometimes kids probably didn't experience, getting big gifts for Christmas, and this is all they got. And they were happy. And it makes me think a lot about community and how neighbors back in those days really did rely on each other. So I hope in this video you learned a little bit more about the heritage in that area. And as we get closer to Christmas morning, I hope you have a very good Mis Crismes.